Morning. How are you this morning? Good. Good. Effectively, you're the front row. Right. I know. I know. And if you got rid of that, everybody would back more. Well, good morning, everyone. It is great to be with you all this morning. And I want to tell you how much Jan and I have appreciated our weekend here. We have had just a wonderful time. I want to thank Brian and Val for opening their bed and breakfast home to us. And their hospitality. I want to thank the elders for allowing me to speak today, and to Brandon for sharing the pulpit. I know that's tough for a preacher to do that sometimes, but definitely appreciate that. We're also want to be mindful of the Umball family as we also encourage them, mourn with them. I'm also very appreciative of the events from yesterday. I understand the ladies had an outstanding event, a great turnout, about 100 were great encouragement to my wife Janet. And, I know that went very, very well, so we appreciate that. And I was not in the session, of course, but I'm told that Janet said during her remarks, when she was referring to me, she said that she thought I was handsome, but also when she first met me, that she thought I was obnoxious. And so I would just like to say this morning, in rebuttal to that I think that she is beautiful, and I have felt that way from the very beginning. I loved her from the moment I met her, and so just want to put that out there as a rebuttal. So how many of you all are familiar with the Appalachian Trail? Most of the people here to Pennsylvania probably would be somewhat familiar with it. And how many of you have ever hiked any portion of it? Okay. Whenever I ask that question, Janet always raises her hand because she has done the width of the Appalachian Trail. For about 2 seconds, she traveled about that far, so she always tries to get credit for it and raises her hand. Well, I hiked the entire Appalachian Trail back in 2016, and I learned a lot about myself. I learned a lot about God. I connected with God in a way that I hadn't really before. And I think sometimes God speaks to you in different ways when you are out of your normal routine, out of your comfort zone. That ended up being the case with me. I had a very impactful adventure, learned a lot about myself, learned a lot about God. And so today, in Bible class, we're going to talk a little bit about that. I'm going to share some of my lessons from the Appalachian Trail. And then after lunch today, I'm going to share a few more of the lessons. Okay, so you're going to kind of a two-part lesson today, before and after. So let's go ahead and start with a little AT 101 for those that may not be as familiar with it. The Appalachian Trail traverses 14 states. It goes from Springer Mountain in Georgia all the way up to Mount Katahdin in Maine. And it covers 2,000, or at the time it covered 2,189.1 miles, which makes it the longest hiking-only footpath in the world. And today, if you were to hike the Appalachian Trail, it would be about 8 miles longer. From year to year, they make changes to the trail, and they fix portions and reroute portions. And so a little bit longer today. But to give you a sense of that, that's kind of a big number to get your mind around. So I'll put it to you this way. If you were to get up tomorrow morning, leave the church parking lot, and walk to Pittsburgh, I'm not sure why you would do that. But if you were to do that tomorrow morning, walk to Pittsburgh, you would have to do that every morning for 51 days, almost 2 months. Walk to Pittsburgh 51 times in order to cover the same distance. And so it is a very long footpath. And when they designed the Appalachian Trail, they, unlike when you're putting in like a highway, where you kind of figure out what's the easiest way to get around a mountain, with the Appalachian Trail, with each state, they said, what's the hardest way to get through the state? What is the highest mountain? There was nothing about let's make it easy or simple. And so they literally went over the highest mountains in each of the states, the toughest paths, and it ends up being an elevation change, as you can see there, of over 464,000 feet, which is the equivalent of climbing Mount Everest 16 times. And so you're going over about 400 mountain ranges during your journey. So there's shelters along the way, about 250 shelters. I stayed occasionally at them, although most of the time I tented. And each year there's about up to around 4,000 people, a little bit less maybe in some years, that attempt it. And between 20 and 25% succeed. The year I did it, it was a 20% success rate or an 80% fail rate, if you want to look at it more negative. So 2015 comes along. Back in time, it's fall of 2015, and I'm at my mother-in-law's house in South Carolina, and I was planning this hike, and we're sitting there at the breakfast table. She asked me about the hike, but why I would be abandoning her daughter for some. And so we had a brief conversation, and I gave her a brief answer, and she kind of looked at me and she said, why in the world did you want to go and do this? So clearly I hadn't done my job of explaining. I hadn't really done enough. So I thought, I need to go back and think about this some more. And I need to have a little bit of rationale behind this journey. I'm going to abandon my wife, as she said, for 6 months. There needs to be a reason for that, or reasons. And so I went back and I thought about it. And I came up with these reasons. First of all, I love fun experiences in new places. I grew up as a Air Force kid, a military brat, traveling around the world. Went into the Air Force myself. And I love new locations. I love new adventures. I love challenges, fun experiences. And so that was part of it. I love the outdoors. I love camping. I love wildlife. I like staring at the stars from a mountaintop. I love wading through creeks. I'm just a person that enjoys very much the outdoors. I love adventure. When I was younger, there was a book that came out called Undaunted Courage by the late Stephen Ember about the Lewis and Clark hike journey across the United States. So I'm reading about Lewis and Clark and all of the planning that went into that, and their correspondence with President Jefferson, just all the things they encountered with Native Americans and the mountain ranges. And I got so caught up in that book, and I got so caught up in their adventure. And as I finished that book, I just thought to myself, I want to have my own adventure. I want to not just have adventures through other people, books that I read, but I want to, at least one time in my life, have my own adventure, have something that would be worthy of a book, something that would be a great challenge, very much adventurous, which leads me to the next one. I love a challenge. I love trying to take on something that either other people or I tell myself that I can't do. So I thought about running a marathon. I wasn't sure if I could do that, and I ended up running 2 of them. We thought about traveling the country by RV. We do that. Ended up doing it for 5 years. And so I like to take on tasks that are a little bit bigger than what I would think I might be able to do just because it challenges me. I love planning, and this comes from my Air Force background, but I love planning. With the Appalachian Trail, you have a lot of planning. You have a macro standpoint, the entire journey that you have to make, miles, but then every day is a plan. Every day you wake up, there has to be a plan on how am I going to get to the next point, where am I going to get food and water and resupply and all of that. And so the idea that I have to go from point A to point B and do so with just what is on my back to be alive, that was a great challenge, and it involved a lot of planning. I just relished that. I wanted to get in shape. When I started my hike, I was a little heavy, still a little heavy, but during those 6 months I lost 52 pounds, and I ended up gaining back about 30 of those pounds. So apparently you have to keep walking. You can't stop. I just thought once you lost it, you're good, right? And so then it just started coming back on me. My net is a little bit down, so that's good. I wanted to help a family adopt, and we had a family at our congregation in Florida at the time. They were wanting to adopt a child. Those that have done that, there's a lot of expenses involved in that. And so I thought, let's try to turn my hike into a fundraiser. So people were able to pledge a certain number of cents per mile, and so we were able to raise some money to help this family adopt. I wanted to inspire some school children, so I taught at a Christian school in Florida for 4 years, in office, and there were a couple of 5th and 6th grade classrooms that decided to follow my journey. So as I'm hiking through the states, I would call them occasionally, have FaceTime. They always ask me about going to the bathroom in the woods and had I seen any bears. Those were like the 2 questions on their mind with each phone call. But their teachers did some assignments related to the state I was in. I talked to them about my journey. Had a map of the Appalachian Trail on their classroom wall. I was represented by a little thumbtack. So every time I went 100 miles, they would take that thumbtack and they would, it seemed like they should have been moving farther, just like an inch, but felt like I was working harder than that. But part of my motivation was I knew those kids were following my journey. My mind, if I ever were to quit, and I totally overplayed this in my mind, but I thought, if I quit, those poor children are going to have to walk over to that map. They're all going to be crying. They're going to grab my little thumbtack and they're going to walk over to the trash can. They're going to basically toss me in the trash with tears pouring down their eyes. The reality is they would have been over it in about 2 seconds, but I had made this up to be a pretty big deal for these young people, so that was motivational. The timing was right. I had just turned 50 years old. My wife and I were empty nesters, so I had been talking about doing the trail for many years, read books, watched videos, and finally Janet said to me, she says, why don't you just quit talking about it and do it? So I thought before she changes her mind, get out there on the trail and start hiking, and so good timing. And then I promised my mom that I would do it. My mom got cancer in January of 2015, bile duct cancer that lasting about 10 months, passed away that fall. I had a lot of conversations with her towards the end of her life. One of the things she said to me, she knew this was a dream of mine. She said, I want you to promise me that you will start the Appalachian Trail. Now, she didn't pressure me to finish it. She didn't put that kind of a load on me, like you must finish the trail or you will dishonor my memory. But she did say, start it. Start the journey. Do that for me. Whether or not you finish, there's a lot of factors that start it. And so my dad, after my mom passed away, my dad allowed me to take some of her ashes with me. So I had, in the top of my backpack, I had a little bag, inside another bag. So even though Mom was in heaven, her soul, some of her ashes were with me in my backpack. And it's very motivational carrying ashes with me. So these were my 10 main reasons. And here's the thing, folks. These reasons only needed to be motivational. Okay? So if Val looks at this list, she reflects on it, she's probably not going to go hike the Appalachian Trail tomorrow. Okay? That's okay. The list doesn't have to be telling her. It has to be telling me. That's what matters. And so I say that because some of you have dreams. Some of you have things that you want to accomplish in life. Maybe you want to start an orphanage. You want to cruise the Nile River or build a log cabin or whatever it might be. You're not going to necessarily be able to convince anyone else that it's a good idea. And that's okay. It doesn't have to be motivational, inspiring them. It has to be inspiring you. And that leads me to this thought, which is with a compelling enough why, you'll find the how. Think about that for a minute. So if I were to tell, as an example, if I were to tell Brian that there's a tree out here, and at the top of the tree, there is a bag that has $1 million in it, okay, free to the taking. How many of y'all think that Brian's going to get that bag? Right. Now, how is he going to do it? I have no idea. He may climb the tree. He may get a drone, fly it up there. He's an engineer. He's going to figure out a way, right? He may cut the tree down. He may hire someone. I don't know what he's going to do, but I'm telling you, if there's $1 million at the top of the tree, Brian is going to find a way to get it. If I know Brian, because his why is compelling. Okay, the why is compelling. We'll find the how. Apply that to any area of life. We care enough about the lost, right? We care about their souls. We're going to find a way to abandon them, right? So think about in your life the things that you're taking on, your goals, and that I would encourage you to just spend a lot of time on the why. Why am I doing this? Why am I taking this on? Why am I going to this trouble? I had 10 reasons there that were very inspiring to me. Because I had those reasons, the why, the how fell into place. Okay, and I was able to figure out a way to do it. All right, so as I was going on my journey, as I mentioned, I learned a lot about myself. I learned a lot about God. And I try to capture these lessons as I went on my little phone. At night, I would think of something. I would type it in my phone. That became a blog that I put out, and that eventually a couple of books. These things that I learned are called FOB Fundamentals. There's 7 of them. And this morning, we're just going to talk about 3 of them. This afternoon, we'll talk about some more. These are in 2 books that I wrote about my Appalachian Trail. A couple of pictures here from the trail. Beetle, a beetle that I befriended, and a mule, or a donkey, I'm not sure what it was, but I was trying to eat my I'll be honest, there's probably animal lovers out there. I thought for a moment, like, can you eat a donkey? And how would I go about eating the donkey? Is there a way, like, if all I had was a spork, and I was like, can you actually kill and eat a donkey using nothing but a spork? And these are the thoughts that cross your mind. I did not eat the donkey. Anyone worried about that. On the trail, they have what they call trail magic. These are people that show up, serve food. Out there, they just water, and so I encountered a lot of good trail magic along my journey through several spots. All right, so let's get to the fundamentals. I'll try to get to these as quickly as I can. So fundamental number 29 in the book is whatever role God has called you to in life, however important or unimportant it may seem, do it well because you are a hero to someone. So I'm in Virginia, and I had traveled 1,000 miles. Okay, that's much further. That's about 970 miles further than I had ever hiked in my life. And I was feeling pretty proud of myself, patting myself on the back, and of course, what do? You take a picture. So I got a selfie of me with a sign that says 1,000. These signs are along the way at different milestones. So I'm feeling pretty proud of myself, pretty good about it. And of course, what do you do with the selfie? You post it on Facebook. So I posted this picture on Facebook, kind of like, I'm not trying to show miles, wanting you all to know about it. Feeling pretty good about that. Pretty proud of my epic beard, which looked kind of like Spanish. And so I posted it and went on about my way. And a little bit later, I got a message that someone commented on my post, and it was our preacher from Florida. And this is what our preacher commented on my photo. He said, "Congratulations, these adventures are going to make an awesome book one day soon. God will work through this journey of yours to do many great things. I have so enjoyed your posts, and for the rest of us who will never accomplish anything so significant and may feel useless from time to time, I could not help but think about the tree behind you bearing that sign. It has never been anywhere, and yet there it stands, and it still serves an important purpose." Give it to a preacher to just take away all the glory of myself and focus it on the tree, right? He didn't say anything about my epic beard or about the 1,000 miles, but he was focused on the tree that bears the sign. And so I thought about his words. And this next picture here, notice what I've done is I have zoomed in on the tree, okay, the sign. I've cropped myself out, and the words that he had spoken just kept ringing through my mind. The tree that bears the sign serves an important purpose. Well, let's talk about that tree. The tree got no glory, no fanfare. It wasn't the biggest, oldest, or prettiest tree on the Appalachian Trail or even on that mountain, right? And yet, it had a purpose. It had a job to do, standing tall, holding that sign. And by doing its job, it allowed others, it allowed the sign to be displayed, and also the thousands of hikers who would come through there, it allowed them to take a picture in front of the tree, in front of the sign, as they got all the glory. And as I thought about that, I thought, I suspect that there are some people in this room, perhaps even this morning, maybe you have felt unappreciated or useless at times. Maybe you feel like at times your life may seem a little boring or may seem a little insignificant. And you may think from time to time, all I do is fill in the blank. Maybe it's been a while since your boss or your customers or your parents or your children or your spouse have thanked you for who you are and what you do. Okay? And so sometimes in life we all go through these seasons where maybe we just feel a little bit unappreciated for our efforts, right? Well, I want to remind you this morning, you know this, but I want to remind you that your life has significance because God made you in his image. You are a child of God, and thus you have significance. And you know that you have significance because we know that Christ made the ultimate sacrifice, giving his life up on a cross to make our salvation possible. That's how much he loved us. That's how valuable we were to him and are to him. And so God loves us, and he has a plan and a purpose for us. And as I thought more about that concept, I thought, Christians are often the tree that bears the sign. Okay? They're often the ones that are helping others, propping up others so that others can get the glory. And so you put that into a church context, and I would say if this congregation is like most congregations, there are some trees that bear the sign. There are some people that run the AV. And they're not out in front like the preacher or maybe the elders. They're behind the scenes doing things that are important so that others can kind of, not that they're seeking glory, but they get more of the attention because they're out in front. There are people who teach our Bible classes. Maybe the person that's taught the second grade Bible class for 30 years. Maybe it's been a while since someone has thanked you for that. Okay? Maybe it's been a little unappreciated. You may be the person that does the communion prep, okay? Every week you're preparing communion and filling the trays and all that, and it's not like you get a trophy every week or a certificate, yet you're doing a job that allows this church to function. And so you have a purpose, you have a job to do, and by doing your job, God is getting the glory, okay? You may not get a certificate, you may not be thanked often, but you are, by your efforts, you're allowing others to grow and be encouraged and grow spiritually. And so I would challenge you for a moment. If we had more time, we could get into a discussion of this and have a lot of comments. But I would just ask you, as you sit there, to think about, when have you been the tree? When have you been in a supporting role, helping others, as a parent, as an employee, as a servant of God? And then when are the times that you have been the sign? When have you had others, through their efforts, you've been propped up and you've been able to achieve something and gotten the glory? So this idea of the tree that bears the sign, there are some trees in here. There are some unsung heroes in here, I'm sure. And what you do matters. It is valuable. It is a big part of the kingdom, and it's a big part of the work that God's doing. So that's Fob Fundamental number 29. A couple more pictures here. This is a guy named Other Brother that I met and hiked with a little bit. And then I hiked up a ski slope that was closed for the season. Had a sign saying keep off equipment. So I sat there on the ski chair and I had lunch. So it's a wonder I didn't get arrested during this journey of mine. But I mostly obeyed the rules, but not that day. So here's some more trail magic. After hiking a long day, there's nothing. All right, let's go to the next Fob Fundamental, number 41. Some of God's blessings require a little extra effort to find. Keep searching, and you may be surprised with what God has in store for you. So the story here is, it is day 130. I'm in Massachusetts. I have gone 18.1 miles that day. And has anyone in here ever been in a situation in your life where you were thirsty, had no water? Thirsty and no water. This does not happen very often in our society for most people. Most of the time we don't get thirsty. We have access to water, drink whatever all the time. And we get thirsty. Most of us, most of the time, are going to go to water, right? Because we're an advanced nation, civilized society. I can tell you it's rare, but when it happens, when you are in a situation where you are thirsty, you don't have water, or you don't have enough water, it is pretty scary, okay, especially for a hiker. And I try to plan ahead and always have enough water. In fact, you don't even really want to get thirsty. You want to always be drinking really thirsty. But I had not done a good job on this particular day. The sun was setting. I'm almost out of water. And in my little guidebook, it said that there was a footbridge up ahead after going 18 miles. And it said there's possible water underneath it. And sometimes they'll call that like a seasonal spring. Sometimes it's there, sometimes it's not. You never know what you're going to get into. And so I stopped. I took my backpack off. I thought, man, there really needs to be water under this footbridge. So the sun is setting. It's getting dark. I go under this bridge, and there's nothing. There's nothing. I don't see any water. The next water source potential wasn't for like another 3 or 4 miles. Dark, and I really don't want to be hiking out in the dark, thirsty especially. So I'm kind of in a little bit of a bind right here. Kept looking. I'm like, why isn't it here? I actually had earlier prayed that there would be water at this source. Water there. So I kept looking, go up and down this little ravine. I flip on my headlamp, and now it's pretty much completely dark. And just when I was at the moment of desperation, after looking for a while, I see this little sparkle of light, a reflection of the sun. And I go over there, and there is a little spring. It's about that big around, okay? A spring of water. And where you have a spring, you have water. And I don't know if you can see it on the screen there, but on that picture there, right in the middle of that darkness, you might be able to see a couple of dots. That was the spring. It's tiny little thing of water. This is what it looked like the next day. You can see the water there a little clearly. So I saw that little spring of water. I got out my little Sawyer filter. I pumped a liter of water, sitting there in the dark, alone, by that little water source. I just guzzled a liter of water. I pumped 2 more liters. I took back up, set up my tent in the darkness. Next morning, I drank another liter, and I pumped more out of that little spring. I was topped off. I had a lot of water that night, and it's all because of this spring that I found. Now, here's the point. It was the extra effort that I put in that resulted in discovering God's blessing. It would have been so easy for me to get to that footbridge, look down, say, where's the water? There was supposed to be water here, potentially. Where's the water? God, I prayed for this. Where is it? Right? Been a little bit disappointed that my prayer wasn't answered. Okay, so what answered my prayer was when I took my backpack off and I went under the footbridge and I started looking for it and I flipped the light on. That's when I found the blessing, is when I put in a little extra effort. Okay, so reflect on that for a moment. Let me give you another scenario. This is day 148. I'm in New Hampshire. I come to a trailhead, and my guidebook says that there is a potential trail magic couple, givers of trail magic. They love on hikers, that kind of a thing. And you are to walk, you're to go left 0.3 miles up a hill and take a right on East Cemetery Road, and the third house on the right will be a teal house. This is where Jerry and Tony Pease live. And they're a couple that often takes in hikers. So I'm thinking, that really sounds good. Maybe potentially a hot meal, a shower. So I go left on East Cemetery Road. I go 0.3 miles, and I've got my watch on. I know what I'm looking around, and there's nothing. There's like no cemetery road. There's no civilization. It's like out in the country. I'm like, seriously? Like, I was so looking forward to this. And so I was about to give up, and it wasn't, in this case, it wasn't out of water. I was okay, but I was just kind of bummed out. And I thought, you know what? This guidebook is usually pretty accurate. I'm going to go another 100 yards. I'm going to go like 0.5. So I go another 100 yards, and just as I'm not about that point, I look over and I see a road sign that says Cemetery Road. Cemetery Road. I take a right on East Cemetery Road. I go 3 houses down. I look over. There is a teal house on the right, just as advertised. I walk up to the door. I knock on the door. This lady here, Tony, sweet little old lady. She looks out of the upstairs window and she says, "Dollars, can I help you?" And I said, "Well, I'm a through hiker. My name's Steve. I read in the guidebook that you guys sometimes do hikers." I said, "Oh, we do. Normally," she said, "I'm going to take this week off." And I said, "That's okay, man. Bother you. You guys deserve time off." She said, No, that's not a problem. We love our hikers all this way." I said, "Are you sure? You help me out?" She said, "Yep, not a problem." So she brings me into her house. I'm covered in sweat, right? I've been hiking all day, very tired. She says, have a seat next to my husband on the couch there. So he's on the couch, I'm on the couch, I'm sweating. I feel bad even sitting on it. So I'm sitting there. This man's very old. He would end up passing away 3 years later. But very nice old man. Starts talking to me. She brings me out a snack, she called it. She said, eat this snack while I get your dinner ready. And she said, and we're going to watch, I got a special show I want you to watch, episode 1 of season 1 of Dr. Quinn, Medicine Woman. Okay? So, it was just like a scene out of a night gallery or something. I'm sitting there sweating, eating a snack next to this very old man. I'm watching season 1 of Dr. Quinn, Medicine Woman. I can tell you, Dr. Quinn is not unattractive, okay, after having been out in the wilderness for so long. And so anyway, she says, eventually we're going to have dinner. Go ahead and watch this. And so we're about halfway through this episode. I said, this is pretty good. Like, I'm actually enjoying Dr. Quinn, Medicine Woman. I would. She looks at me and she goes, yes. She goes, we have the entire season 1 on. And I'm thinking, like, is our plan tonight to watch the entire season 1? Like, do old people binge watch Dr. Quinn? And is the dinner that she had promised, is it going to be after season 1 or is it going to be after episode 1? So these are the things that go through your mind. Well, it ends up we just watched 1 episode. Brings me out this big old dinner. I'm eating this dinner. We're talking. They're just telling me their life story. They are 5th generation sugarers. So they make maple syrup. Their family, and they explained the process to me. They were on History Channel. Their family was episode. So I ate the meal. She said, hey, if you'll bring me your laundry, I'll fill your laundry. And I said, that'd be great. She says, you can go upstairs, take a shower, take a bath, have a bunch of essential oils. I had never had essential oils in my life. So I soon, 20 minutes later, I'm laying in the bathtub, soaking like peppermint oil all over me. Pretty hot, but I enjoyed it. I don't recommend peppermint oil in the bathtub, but that's another fundamental probably. So she does my laundry. I have this luxurious bath. Get a great night's sleep. Guests there. The next morning, breakfast, syrup, and more conversation. And it was just a wonderful, wonderful time with this couple. So, why do I say all that? Well, remember, I was at the 0.3 mile point. I didn't see anything. So how did I discover this family? I went an extra 100 yards. Okay, I went 0.35. So a little extra effort resulted in 2 hot meals, a shower, a warm bed, clean laundry, homemade syrup, and a new appreciation for Dr. Quinn Medicine. Okay? All because when it seemed hope was gone, when it seemed the blessing was not there, I went an extra 100 yards. And so I thought about, over the course of that day, I thought about how many blessings that we miss out on in life simply because we don't persevere. We don't keep going. We don't give that little extra effort. We don't keep walking. We don't keep trying. We give up. And that led me to Matthew 7:7. It says, ask and it will be given to you. Ask or seek and you will find. Knock and the door will be open to you. So I was thinking about these 2 experiences, and I'm thinking about this verse. And my my thought was, why do you think Jesus tells us to ask, seek, and knock? Why does he tell us to do that? Why not just save us the trouble and drop blessings on our lap? Why not, when you get to the footbridge, why not just have the water there? Why do I have to take my backpack off and do a little bit of work to find that water? Why not have the house be there at 0.3 miles where it's supposed to be? Why make me go an extra 100 yards? Okay? Why not just drop these blessings in my lap? Why am I supposed to ask and seek and knock? Think about that, and you can have your own answers. I think it is so that you will appreciate the blessing. Okay? So I'll tell you what, if that water had been there at that footbridge, that house had been there at 0.3 miles, I wouldn't be talking about it later. Okay? It stands out in my mind because it took a little bit of effort and God answering my prayer, but only after I had done my part to do a bit of extra effort. And so I think he wants us to ask and seek, knock, so that we will appreciate those blessings when they arrive. And then I would have you reflect on these questions. Have you ever, through sheer determination, discovered water in a seemingly dry ravine? Think about your own experience, your own examples where it took a little bit of extra effort. And then have you ever reaped a blessing by going the extra mile? And that's really what this Bob Fundamental is about. And I would just encourage you in your walk, your spiritual journey, don't expect necessarily the blessing, the answer to prayer to be right in your face. It's very evident. Oftentimes it takes a lot of prayer and a lot of work, a little extra effort. Only then will you be able to reap that blessing. All right, some more pictures there. That's a glacial pond in New Jersey, of all places. And then bottom right is me sitting with a group of young people around a fire. Some more trail magic. Each of those has a story. All right, and our last fob fundamental today is number 9. You will eventually see every person you know one final time. Since you don't know when that time will come, leave nothing unsaid and leave no kindness undone. So the story here, the backstory is, I have arrived just outside of Franklin, North Carolina. I'm at the trailhead, and they, in this particular place, they have a shuttle that comes periodically, driven by a hostel owner named Ron Haven. He runs this hostel, so he runs a shuttle, he picks up hikers, brings them into town, you can stay at his place or any place you want, but it's a free shuttle. And as we got on the shuttle that day, there was a gentleman sitting there that I recognized. I couldn't quite recall at the moment who it was, but someone said, "That's Baltimore Jack." And Baltimore Jack was a trail legend, a guy that a lot of hikers knew about. He had hiked the Appalachian Trail, the entire thing, 9 times. Okay, so if you do the math there, that's a lot of miles, 1,000 miles. So his little thing that he was known for is that he loved hikers, history, and bourbon, although not necessarily in that order. Okay. And so we get on the bus, and we're all kind of whispering, "That's Baltimore Jack." And of course, Ron's driving the bus, and sneaky hikers on. So we know this guy, we know his background, we know his experience. So we start peppering him with questions. And we're asking him about the trail ahead and about equipment, and all these different things, all these things. Asking him questions, getting advice from him. He couldn't have been more gracious. He answered our questions. He was very kind, very loving, and all that. And so we get off the shuttle, kind of scatter, going about our separate ways to our errands. I'm just kind of thinking to myself, well, I'll see him again later. I'll see him that night. He'll be somewhere around town, whatever. He's going to be visible. Probably see him when I get back on the shuttle, whatever. Well, I didn't see him again, and I find out that he died 42 days later. 42 days later, I'm further down the trail before the Brooklyn Hotel. Word spread around like Baltimore Jack had, I think he had a heart attack or whatever, and passed away. So as I'm writing the book, telling the story of my interaction with Baltimore Jack, I did a little bit of research to story. And what I found out about him is that he was, his actual name was Adam Tarline. He was from Brookline, Massachusetts. His parents had passed away when he was very young, and his father passing away prevented him from hiking the Appalachian Trail with his father, which his father had promised that he would do with him before or after he graduated from high school. He had been homeless for many years. He struggled with bad knees, probably from all those hikes, and also he struggled with alcoholism. They called him Baltimore Jack from the Bruce Springsteen song, those lyrics, because he had left a daughter he loved, went hiking, and never came So that's how he got that name. And on the Appalachian Trail, the article said he found a community he loved and could identify with, a place he could call home. Unfortunately, I didn't get to know him until after his death. Okay? On that little shuttle ride, it was kind of all about me. But my questions were what the other hikers' questions were. I didn't really get to know him that well, and I regret that. To give you another story, this is our last story this morning. I am hiking with this millennial. He went by the trail name Mumbles, Luke Schuyler. He's a millennial. We were hiking together. We had spent some time hiking together, but he was younger than me. He was a faster hiker. So we started talking a little bit, and he asked me, he said, hey, did you hear there's going to be a bunch of beer at the Over Mountain shelter tonight? And I said, yeah, I heard that. Don't sound too excited. I said, yeah, I don't really drink. That's just not a big deal. And so he says, why don't you drink? And I shared a little bit with him about my faith and about my family background. I said, it's not something I do. It's not part of my lifestyle. So we talked a little bit about my faith, and then I said, so what's your faith story? What's your background? Well, I'd love to tell you that, Bob. I'd love to share that with you, but you're kind of slow. And he said, why don't I share that with you around the campfire tonight? We're headed to this Over Mountain shelter, this beautiful barn shelter. And so I said, that sounds good. So he hikes on, and I'm thinking that night I'm going to be around the campfire with this guy, and I'm going to get to hear his faith journey, get on his life. Well, he wasn't at the campfire that night. He wasn't at that shelter. He had apparently gotten there kind of early and just decided to hike on. And so I never got to see him again. So I'm writing my book. And at the end of the book, I give an update on some of the people I had met. And I'm curious what happened to Mumbles. So I reached out to a friend of his that he had hiked with. And I said, hey, I'm writing this book, and I'm going to give an update on people I had met. And you know if Mumbles finished or whatever. And he goes, you didn't hear. I said, no. And he goes, well, he did finish. He finished 18. But then he took his own life. And so I never got to see him again. And to this day, I regret that I wasn't more intentional about hearing his story. I could have hiked faster while to hear his story. Never got to hear his story, never got to pray with him, never got to really encourage him. He heard my story, but I never got to hear his. And to this day, I regret that. And so he did finish the trail, but then and so these two examples that I just shared with you, they kind of led me to Colossians 3:12. It says, therefore, as God's chosen people, holy and dearly loved, clothe yourselves with compassion, kindness, humility, gentleness, and patience. And I feel like on the trail, I had spent a lot of time clothing myself with the latest gear, but I hadn't always clothed myself with compassion and kindness and that kind of a thing. And so from that, my big takeaway was that relationships are more important than hiking. Okay? People I met, the people that I interacted with, were more important than the journey I was on. Put it in a context that may be closer to home for you. People, the people you work with, the people you go to school with, are more important than projects or than accomplishments. And so what I would encourage you to do this morning with this Bob Fundamental is I would encourage you to take some time and do a mental inventory. You can do it on a spreadsheet, you can do it on a piece of paper, but do a little inventory of your family members and your closest friends and your coworkers and others with whom you come in regular contact. And ask yourself if you knew that your next interaction with them was going to be your final interaction. Like, this is my last shot with this person. This is the last time I'm going to see that person. What would you say to them? What would you express to somebody, your spouse, your friend, your coworker, if you knew it was your very last time with them? What would you say to them? And then here's what I would suggest. Go ahead and say it. Go ahead and express those things, because rarely do you actually receive notice that it's going to be the very last time with someone. So rather than wait for that, go ahead and say it. Some more trail magic there. And I wanted to briefly mention the books. They are on the table in the back if anyone's interested. There's the two books that I wrote about the AT. Faith in the Margins is a 365-day devotional book that I wrote based on the margins from 5 generations of family Bibles. I have a great-grandmother's Bible all the way through my children's Bibles. And I went through them methodically, and I pulled out notes that they had written, and I matched the note up with the scripture, and then I write a one-page devotional, so it's called Faith in the Margins. The Eulogy is a book I wrote with Janet. We co-wrote that book, and it is a part fictional, part nonfiction book about a dying man and the family that rallies around him. It also tells the stories of the sojourners, which Christ with Harvey. It tells the true story of the sojourners, this fictional. The book on the right is Spiritual Pursuit, and it is a book where I take 14 popular board games like Monopoly and Risk and some other ones, and I draw spiritual applications from 14 different board games. So the idea here is you can play the board game with your family, your friends, and then do a devotional. Journey Through Genesis is a devotional commentary on the book of Genesis. I try to go through Genesis with a fresh set of eyes, older guy, right, tell the story, hopefully in a way that is encouraging. And then this book, Every Scar a Story, is basically a part one of an autobiography that I wrote. It covers the first 25 years of my life growing up as a military kid and traveling around the world. What I learned, the scars I experienced, kind of a thing. So if any of those books you're interested in, they're available in the back. And I'm happy to sign them. I appreciate your attention this morning. For worship hour, we're going to go to something completely different. And then this afternoon after lunch, I have a few more lessons